welcome to another episode of Focus On. I'm Tabitha Muthoni, and today we bring you the first ever Africa Business and Investment Forum, the first ever from Uganda. And the main focus is ensuring that Uganda becomes the region's next economic hub, looking at industrialization and innovation.
I believe the biggest coffee park in the world that is being initiated and developed in Uganda, in Africa, for Africa by Africans. And this is really what we call the African Renaissance. The African Renaissance is about that industrial revolution, value addition, industrialization, and innovation that we're putting together for African people to believe in themselves, to understand that we, the people, the race, the generation, the now Africa, to change Africa for the better of the generations to come. And the forum today is about industrialization, is about value addition, is about job creation by using the raw materials that have been going for a long time to probably the rest of the world and never gain as African people. And I would quickly give you an example because we are the Africa Coffee Park, where the total value of coffee is 460 billion. But only Africa out of the 460 billion gets 4.6 billion, while Africa is the biggest coffee grower for the rest of the world. We get that good cup of coffee to our tables, but we leave Africa in shambles, in less value. And this is the time, and the Africa Business Forum is what is focusing on to ensure that our raw materials, our coffee, and others that Africa deserves, we can claim it and stop the nonsense of neo-colonialism. You know, that topic and that we always talk about and use as an excuse. It's time for Africa to act, be actionable in all that we must do to liberate ourselves. The main key stakeholders, one is, I believe, in the private sector myself. The private sector is a key big stakeholder, and of course government agencies, diplomatic corps, UN, of course the head of state. Like I told you before, we expect in October to host about 10 heads of state here at the Africa Business Forum to not only discuss this, but be actionable. That's why you saw the Africa Business Forum today, this morning, start with the barrister, young people, art of action points to show that it's not about no more speeches for Africa, but the action. So for Africa to move now is us to act.
Yes, and the aspect of mobilizing the youth. Before we came in here, you are talking about the aspect of industrialization and working with the youth to ensure that we instill the right mindset in them when it comes to growing themselves, re-innovating, and all of that. So let us look at this from a human capital workforce, which is very important when it comes to coffee. We see young boys picking coffee, women, young ladies, young girls picking coffee. So how do you address child labor and the human capital workforce in essence?
You know the factors of production that we used to talk about. You know them: land, capital, and labor. Nowadays we've added another one, which is entrepreneurship. So now we have 4 factors of production. Now labor is key, but we cannot keep our young people just picking the coffee. That's keeping enslaving ourselves. And that's why you see at today's business forum, we don't even necessarily talking about anything to do with seedlings. You're seeing baristas. This is where the young people believe, and you need to support them to be. Those are the spaces we need to see the young people being chemistry engineers, food science engineers, biochemists, electrical engineers. Those are the jobs that we need to create for our young people. African governments must realize that there are no other governments that are going to come and support the entrepreneurs. I'm excited that my own government in Uganda, headed by His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, has been able to pick this and support it and heavily support it because we're investing about $560 million. And you can imagine that's huge sums of money to complete this. And that's the first phase. And you could imagine me, the young entrepreneur in Africa, where would I be able to get the $560 million? So these huge investment and bold steps, I appeal to all African leaders, you must come up and support your entrepreneurs. Governments all over the world have been doing that. We've been seeing the United States really supporting the entrepreneurs. I can end up by the Prime Minister of Japan in the 19s when it was starting, when they supported Toyota. Toyota earlier, you can go read and Google, it was in silk. And then the Prime Minister mentioned to his team then and said, the automobile industry is going to be the next big thing for the generation and the world to come. And the MPs or the leaders then, they actually argued with him and resisted him. But he was a bold prime minister. He said, we must support Toyota. You can imagine a world without Toyota today. And that's what African leaders I want to urge you to do. You must support your local entrepreneurs. You must believe in them. If you want to see the change you want to see, the answers are here. They are in Africa. They are in Africans for Africa.
The right mindset in place. So 560 million US dollars, that's a lot of money. What are your expectations in terms of the return on investment? And also, when do you expect the project to, get complete?
In the next, the first phase, we're focusing in the next 5 months to be done. And I'm calling all of you to come for the Africa Coffee Festival that was launched by about 10 heads of state. And they promised they'll be back to see what we're doing. So at the Africa Coffee Festival happening this October, we hope that we will be done with the first completion, and our target of return would go to about $1.5 billion.
The government of Uganda has positioned science, technology, and innovation as the key driver of our socio-economic transformation. We have a vision 2040, which we started implementing in 2010. In 2010, our GDP was about $25 billion. It's 2025 now. We have moved half the mile, but our GDP is about 55 billion now. It has just doubled, and yet we've worked half the time. What we want to do in the next 15 years, which is the rest of the mile, is to grow the GDP tenfold. So move from 55 billion to 550 billion. And STI, Science, Technology and Innovation, is the catalyst that's going to make that happen.
And how best can we do that? Do we have the right policies, infrastructure, or regulatory framework to do that?
We have developed a strategy, and there are a couple of pillars you have to look at. And we're not reinventing the wheel, really. Yes, you have to strategically locate yourself in particular value chains that will give you the highest chance of success. But when it comes to pillars, it is very clear what you have to focus on. One, human capital. You must have a relevant human capital that's going to develop your innovation and industrialization. Secondly, infrastructure. And you're not just talking about the manufacturing plants. You're talking about the logistics, the roads, the railways, the energy, the power you need. So you have to invest in relevant infrastructure to develop your, to power your industrialization. Of course, the policy environment. Some of the panel discussions we're having here are pointing towards what incentives you're giving nascent enterprises for them to be able to, because when you're starting out, you're crawling, right? And yet you have to compete with the big boys. You can't start taxing an enterprise that hasn't made profit yet. So you hear about, tax breaks that we're giving young businesses, be it on income tax, where the government is actively providing offtake, because charity has to begin at home. So the government also provides offtake for products that we can make here. For example, pharmaceuticals, if you can make it here, then we put in some form of protectionism and ensure the government is giving offtake, because Uganda as most African countries, always has government as the main customer, the main client in the economy. And then you also look at how the ecosystem is structured in terms of value chains. Any value chain has three tiers. You have the raw material production and maybe primary processing. And then you have value addition, core value addition. And then you have the consumption end. Now, we are very good at the raw material production, but we are not good at the middle tier, value addition, where 90% or more of the value lies. We are also good at the consumption end. And the bad thing is when you look at what we teach in schools, in our universities, we focus more on the peripheral tiers and not on the middle one. If you go to our universities, we have the best agronomists, we have the best soil scientists, we have the best extension scientists, extension workers. If you go this side on engineering, we teach maintenance, service, and repair. But we don't teach design, we don't teach manufacturing. So we have to strategically locate ourselves in that middle tier and then identify, we call it a sweet spot. What is that point where we can attack and create the highest chance of success? And we have this policy of make some, build some. For example, for coffee, we can't say that our entry point is going to start making our own freeze drying equipment. The technology is there. So get it and apply it to your coffee because that is well known. Of course, concomitantly also working on R&D to ensure that you're putting higher value products on the market, because it so happens that the longer you extend the value chain, the more value added products.
With a target of 1.2 to 5 billion US dollars, Uganda has its eyes set on the right policies and incentives to realize this. From Uganda, for this special focus on, I have been your host, Tabitha Muthoni.